message. I left him a message about
And the police always come to us to get
lumber
the
milling
video.
and stuff like that. That's more of an
Oh,
industrial.
yeah, but they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
lumber
that's
milling,
something I-
exactly. He wanted it rezoned because he wanted to be more able to do a farm
Yeah,
kind of use,
which I
which he
thought
can't
was
do in a
great,
single family,
but
which is
they-
fine.
yeah, like that.
But
Got some water? Okay. At least a little bit. Okay.
last bottle apparently.
So my next,
10 acres.
so, you know,
I believe she did.
What is it for the farm? Is that fall? Yeah, no, farm use, you know, we're looking at,
He probably would have tried to call me, but I don't bring my phone in.
Oh, we are using for seasonal agriculture. Yeah, he can do
with this
agriculture.
kind of a thing.
Yes, yes. If he changes into that, if he's got say a berry patch, he can do you pick berry patch. Although I don't know on 10 acres how many berry patches you can have.
Mine?
So that definitely benefits him. 'cause
Yes.
One time, because my phone went off when I was sitting in here when they were for the
He can do all
BZA.
those things, which he can't
I
do
was
right now.
sitting in the audience and it went off.
Eggs if he's got chicken.
I should turn mine
So he
off.
can do
Turn
all
off
this.
the-
Here,
Yes, that's true. Delayed the start a few minutes for Jeff.
No. If you have, don't tell me.
Jeff's running late.
Yeah, I just said he's running a few minutes late.
No. Oh, yeah, that's.
It feels funny sitting on this side. I never sit on this side.
I was gonna say, where do you sit for the township meetings? Right here? You should have your name in bold right there.
Should have a big red chair there.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of fence is there around it?
You're
How much?
suggesting to put one around it.
How much standing water will be there in it?
4 or so feet.
Definitely a fence. No different than a swimming pool. 4 foot tall, non-impalable fence.
Well,
Zoning of,
4 foot of water's engineering standards.
The
All
hanger.
ponds in Van Buren have 4 feet of water.
There's a section of our zoning code.
it's like nobody was here for the public hearing. That's what's upsetting, you know?
Wisdom. Why did Wayne County decide to do away with the fountain thing? I mean, yeah, it circulates water, right? It keeps mosquitoes away. Why the heck would you do away with that?
You know, I'm not sure. I've never run
I
into
know
a fountain.
They look good. There are several in Canton in the older subdivisions.
She's just white trim. And I don't know which project she's from this side.
No, this is pure. This is pure for liability because it's located in.
But it's
We did the same thing behind the community center.
Because that's what I was planning.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they intend to put it, they will need your approval to do it. That is why they have to.
And you get the impression that it's dirty.
I was hoping for you.
Made it.
It's fun to climb that fence.
That's cool.
We got
If I
about
get
2
lean,
minutes.
yes, I can see it if I lean over this way.
Oh, yeah.
After the Tide Pod challenge and all, the kids
Light
these days
reflects
aren't
right
that
on
smart. They're dumb as doornails.
I need it. I don't have. I'll hit a book.
I had to pick a pen that is dead. Okay, let's hope this one works.
I was running. I was running late.
I've never, since I've been an engineer, I've never
I was
ran
afraid I
into
wasn't gonna make the lights.
standards
If I,
where fountains are areas.
I don't think
I'm
so. I
in
think
the
I'm
required aerators and everything, so it wouldn't stagnate and get cattails in.
There's a lot of
But
rifling
I think the county decided they didn't want
on the
to.
shoulders.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
too.
much.
I'm curious. I'll have to ask some other staff about that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, at least you brought your dialect.
This time yeah, I know. Compared to. I read them all. I just didn't get the printouts.
Good catch on the minutes, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
It is 5:30.
we just lost.
Although I had our recording secretary go make me waiting on recording secretary.
Is she gonna be our new one? Tina's just off.
Yeah, Tina's on.
Oh,
And then I did my sunglasses, so I left that on the table.
nice.
So now I'll squint all evening.
So how's that weather been?
A little smoky.
Yeah, when New York's air quality is better than ours.
Yeah, what they said, Detroit's the worst in the country right now?
Detroit and Chicago.
Third worst in the planet, behind Dubai and
Where's
Chicago.
China? In the
That's what
China
they said.
fourth?
Beijing's better than us?
Probably yesterday too.
He's better than us? Wow.
So when's that gonna be over with?
When they get the fires out.
They had it under control.
It don't sound like it now.
Heard it's from
They need to listen to
Canada
that
and out
Smokey the
west.
Bear.
two places.
Yeah, if you could, just making a copy of one of the reports for our commissioners. So, Mr. Chair, we can get started. It's 5:30. We need to call roll. We can handle that.
At this time, at the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, 5:30 PM. At this time, I'm calling meeting to order. It is 5:34. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
State the following: Medina Atchison. Here. Sherry Budd. Brian Cullen. Here. Bernard Grant.
Here.
Jeff Jar. Here. Jackson Paul.
Here.
Could, at this time, we'll have an approval of the agenda is before you. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Treasurer Bud. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any negatives to it? Okay, next item is the minutes of the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of June 14th, 2023. Do we have a motion concerning the minutes?
Through the chair, I make a motion, we approve the minutes from the regular meeting of June 14th, 2023 as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Brief discussion. These are the meeting minutes that were that were amended this afternoon, correct?
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
The-
Pardon me.
That's okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have no correspondence or announcements at this time, or public hearings, old business, new business. We have before us case 22058, Cameron Smythe, 16355 Haggerty Road, rezoning request. A request by owner Cameron Smythe to rezone 16355 Haggerty Road, described as partial ID number V125-83142990001000 from R1B Single Family Residential District to AG Agricultural Land Estates. The parcel is located on the east side of Haggerty Road between Riggs Road and Savage Road. First up is a presentation by the township staff and consultants. Director Power.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to comment on this request today. I'm going to put up an image of the property on your screen just for orientation. As a reminder, there was a public hearing for this request at the last meeting held on June 14th, and we are now being asked to take action on this request. So I'll go through the findings of the staff report. Between myself as the planning director and our planning consultant, we both handle different rezoning petitions, typically the residential or agricultural ones. Staff handles those, so I'll be doing the report tonight on that. As mentioned by the chair, the Planning Commission is being requested to review a rezoning petition for 16355 Haggerty Road from R1B Single Family Residential District to Agricultural and Estates District. The property is 11635 Haggerty Road. Parcel number was read and is in your agenda. The parcel size is roughly 10.1 acres. The adjacent properties to the north, south, and west are zoned single-family residential R1B, and to the east is zoned Agricultural and Estates District. There were public hearing notices published in the Belleville Area Independent on May 24th, and notices sent to property owners within 300 feet on that same day. And then again, the public hearing was held on June 14th. For a little bit of background on the site, the subject site has a property classification of 401 residential improved. The site contains a 2,371 square foot dwelling, as well as several small accessory buildings. And the parcel zoning has been consistent for over 49 years based on reviewing a record of a published zoning map from around that time, which is included in your packet. Show that this property and the adjacent properties were zoned R1B over the years. The owner has provided a narrative letter with your packet that describes a number of current and proposed farming or agricultural uses for both personal and potentially commercial farming production for the property, which include a fruit tree orchard, a large vegetable garden, lumber, and a flock of 30 chickens. And the request is subject to planning and zoning law under the state of Michigan. And based on the Planning and Zoning, the Zoning Enabling Act, PA 110 of 2006, we are reviewing our township's criteria for rezoning under that act and under our township zoning ordinance. My review of this request will be following the guidelines and the criteria from section 12.504 of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance, which pertain to the rezoning criteria. If the Planning Commission is inclined to recommend approval of the rezoning, the Township Board of Trustees will actually be the body that adopts the rezoning in two different readings. The first criterion is that the rezoning request has consistency with the goals, policies, and objectives of the master plan. And I'm sorry, I'm going to skip ahead a couple of slides here. In any sub-area plans, if conditions have changed since the master plan was adopted, consistency with recent development trends in the area shall be considered. The township's master plan was comprehensively updated in 2020, and there was a sub-area plan update for the Sumter Road corridor in 2022. Consistently, the area that is the subject of this rezoning request has been identified as a site for rural settlement future land use, which is correlated to the ag zoning that's being requested under this petition. So this criterion has been met broadly, that there is consistency with the master plan. As a reminder, all master plans have a zoning plan as required by the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, which correlate planned land use to zoning. And so having consistency with the master plan is one of the most critical criteria for considering a rezoning request. The second criterion is that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the basic intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. Section 1.102 of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance includes regulations and restrictions governing the location, and construction of structures and buildings to be used for business, industry, residence, social purposes, and other specified purposes. Based on that intent, the zoning ordinance includes provisions for zoning districts, setbacks, building height, and land use. The specific set of regulations that would apply to this property if it is zoned agricultural and estates is section 3.109 of the zoning ordinance, which includes a mix of land uses which are made compatible with their surroundings by adhering to specific building architectures, setbacks, and design features. In your packet, there's a printout of the section of the zoning ordinance 3.109 that contains all the permitted uses and special land uses that are permitted subject to special land use approval in the ag district for your reference. There's also a listing of the setbacks that would apply to those uses. To speak briefly to the uses, I will mention that the narrative letter has an array again of farming and both for personal and commercial farming uses. To be clear, there will have to be some understandings with limits on some of those farming activities. Things like milling lumber would be more of an industrial or manufacturing use that would not be permitted at the site. So we'll have to draw those distinctions and be clear about them. But there are a lot of different arboriculture or lumber uses that are permitted under commercial agriculture that could be the result of this rezoning. And I will say that many agricultural practices are subject to state of Michigan policies and laws around best practices for agricultural management. The capability of the street system and the capacity of the township's utilities and services are also considered in any rezoning petition. So I'll lump those together. Those are two different criteria. The capability of the street system to safely and efficiently accommodate the expected traffic generated by the uses permitted in the zoning district, and the capacity of the township's utilities and services being sufficient to accommodate the uses in the zoning district without compromising the health, safety, and welfare of the township. On the street system, the proposed rezoning is situated on a site that's on Haggerty Road, is not anticipated to add a significant traffic generation to that stretch of Haggerty Road. And as far as public water and sewer, the site does have public water, and it is also large enough to contain a septic sanitary waste disposal system. And I mention that because the township's sanitary utility district boundary stops north of that site. So there's actually, and I'll show on the map, Hull Road is the dividing line for where sanitary actually extends in that portion of the township. So being over 10 acres in area, this site does have the capacity, and this is just a street view of what the road looks like in that area. The next criterion is whether the conditions have changed since the zoning ordinance was adopted, or there was an error in the zoning ordinance that justifies the amendment. The requested rezoning does not change the zoning ordinance, but rather brings the township further into compliance with the adopted master plan. There was no zoning error in the zoning ordinance, but so conditions have not necessarily changed to the extent that an error needs to be corrected. The next criterion we look at is whether the amendment will result in exclusionary zoning, which is a prohibition of a land use when there's a demonstrated need for the use. This request will not do that. Whether the request is compatible with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, or other environmental features with the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district. I will point out this is a relatively large acreage lot where rural settlement or a lower density development pattern is suitable when you consider that there are some environmental constraints in the area or environmental features. There's a metro park to the east, the Griggs Drain, and some woodlands near the site. I'll speak to the remaining criteria together, whether if the rezoning is requested, compatibility of all the potential uses allowed in the zoning district with the surrounding areas, surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land suitability, impacts on the environment, density, nature of use, traffic impacts, aesthetics, infrastructure, and potential influence on property values. Again, the owner intends to continue and expand upon the personal and commercial agricultural uses on the property and its use as a single-family residence. These uses are consistent with the permitted uses of nearby properties, which are also zoned ag on the west side of Haggerty Road, and with the master plan calling for that type of zoning in the future. If the rezoning is requested, the boundaries of the requested rezoning shall be reasonable in relationship to the surrounding zoning districts, and construction on the site will be able to meet the dimensional regulations for the requested zoning district. This is a site with over 500 feet of frontage, and it's 10 acres in area, so it will be adequate to construct buildings on the site that meet the required setbacks and adhere to generally accepted agricultural management practices. If a rezoning is requested, the rezoning district being considered must be more appropriate from the township's perspective than another zoning district. Based on consistency with the master plan and the relative downzoning, this is found to be the case. If a rezoning is requested to allow for a specific use, rezoning the land is considered to be more appropriate than amending the list of permitted or special land uses in the current zoning district to allow the use. Given some of the use descriptions from the applicant, this is found to be the case. It would not be appropriate to bring commercial agricultural buildings, nurseries, greenhouses, things of that nature into the R1B zoning district. So that criterion has been met. Finally, if the rezoning is requested, the requested rezoning will not create an isolated or incompatible zone in the neighborhood. Again, there are agriculturally zoned sites across Haggerty Road to the west, and there is some analysis in this packet showing it is going to be isolated in terms of the stretch of Haggerty Road on the east side. As part of the analysis for this report, we wanted to take a look at what the feasibility would be of some of the other properties in this stretch being rezoned to ag. Some of the parcels along this stretch of Haggerty Road within, I don't know if it was 500 or 1,000 feet of this site, but a small distance from this site, there's a list of those properties that are nearby. A few of them have some dimensional issues that would restrict the ability to rezone to ag and use the properties for ag, but most of these properties would be able to be rezoned, and that lends to the idea that there would not necessarily be an isolated or incompatible zone, and this could be a rezoning that could occur elsewhere in this stretch. Based on the findings that I've just mentioned, those are findings 12.504A through L of the Van Buren Township zoning ordinance rezoning criteria. I would recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning to the Board of Trustees. That being said, there's likely to be questions for the applicant or for myself, and I invite those questions from the Planning Commission. We do have the applicant, Cameron Smythe, here in the audience, and he has not yet had a chance to speak about his request yet, so he's here if you'd like to invite him up to speak to it.
Okay, thank you, Director Power. And for the applicant, do you have anything to present to us?
No, I think
He's got to
he's got to come up.
Please, identify yourself, address.
My name is Cameron Smythe. My address is 16355 Haggerty Road. And I would like to open up the floor to any questions. Dan, I think you did a great job of going through the case, and thank you very much for that.
Okay, commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant?
Through the chair. I would like to know, what are your future plans? I read your letter, but specifically, what are your future plans? And then I'd like to know more about your desires for lumber, growing trees.
Sure. Future plans, we're planning to get bees. Also, we have one hive now. We're planning to get 3 or 4 in the next 2 years, depending on the success of this first one. In terms of lumber, I included that, and that's more as a hobbyist. I don't do that for commercial reasons. It's more when a large hardwood tree falls due to a storm. I have a sawmill, so I just make good use of the wood. I don't have any plans to take that into a commercial pursuit, though.
Thank you.
Anyone else, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Jarrett.
I'd ask the applicant about agricultural retail sales. Will the sales be occurring on the property, or is the product coming out of the farm being trucked elsewhere for sale? Is it direct retail?
Sure. Yes and no. On the property, I mean, we have a large network of friends and family that currently purchase our produce. We're also looking to get into more localized farmers market and small grassroots organizations to distribute our products. But this is more futuristic in sense that we are still up and running and getting the farm up and running. So that is, I guess, something that we'll deal with in the future. But at the current state is that no, we're not selling much on the property right now. We're taking it elsewhere to sell.
Mr. Chair, I'd also ask, does the applicant realize that an agriculturally zoned parcel, agricultural retail sales is a special use? You have to get permission to do that. Do you understand that?
We're not in any grocery stores or licensed venues now. Like I said, it's a network of family and friends, and we sell. And again, I guess a nice side note is that we use only organic amendments and fertilizers. We don't use any synthetics. As you can see, we have runoff into Griggs Drain here, so we don't use any synthetics, so I don't think there'd be any adverse effects or negative externalities onto the environment. And we do plan on retailing, but again, that's more next steps in planning, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question regarding Griggs Drain, possibly for our engineering consultant. Sorry, I just know you don't like engineering surprises, but I have a question regarding conversion of a property into agricultural. This does have runoff into Griggs Drain. Are there any special engineering or drainage requirements that have to be taken into consideration when potentially commercial farming operation is brought up alongside of a drain that's right next to the Huron River?
That would be sort of surface water quality is controlled by Eagle, the state. They would look into that, and if they needed to, and make any determinations on that. As far as traditional stormwater management and runoff, if you were developing the site, a new site, that's where you would have to go through the county regulations. Like we're normally seeing, I don't believe that they're developing anything at this point, so that there would be no, from what I can see, just looking at it right now, I don't believe there'd be any issues with that.
Mr. Chairman, if the property is rezoned to an ag designation, which allows for a farm use, the applicant would be subject to GAMPs under the Right to Farm Act. That is generally acceptable agricultural management practices. So that has got its whole list of rules. It is not the same rules as would be applicable to a commercial or an industrial parcel. So they will have to meet whatever is required of a farm under the state's Right to Farm Act.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the consultant.
Sure.
Would they be subject to a review after they were granted the rezoning? Or is that only if they become when does that come into play for the applicant? He needs to know.
So once the applicant is rezoned to ag, they can pretty much do whatever is a principal permitted use in the zoning ordinance on the property. If they were generating a commercial farm level produce or something, they would need to get in touch with the state and get the farming license. Only when they are licensed by the state do they get protection under the Right to Farm Act, because Right to Farm Act has got significant protections for nuisance lawsuits, and they will get that only if they are registered with the state as a licensed farm. So that would be the next step.
Thank you. As a final question, I just want to make sure that we understand that there's no commercial sawmill going in here. This is strictly a very small scale, not retail operation, right?
Sure. To answer your question, no commercial sawmill. And I think I should add that we don't have any grand plans for expanding and doing any kind of tilling or any large-scale farming operations. We want the property to more accurately reflect the activities that we are currently doing on it, but we don't have plans to expand and start tilling large acreages on the property.
Great. Mr. Chairman, I just, as a comment, want to make sure that the applicant understands that when we rezone a parcel from a residential to an agricultural, the zoning stays with the property. And I appreciate that his farming operation is small and he's not, he's, organic, no runoff. That's great. But once we turn it into an agricultural parcel, if you were to sell it, you could conceivably sell it to another farmer who doesn't share the same set of farming practices, which is why we have to ask those.
Sure, sure. And that would be their prerogative, I guess.
And why we have to, consider that when we're considering a rezoning request.
I would just like to add one thing, so Mr. Smythe is aware. I know Director Power mentioned the term downzoning, so I hope you are aware. You're changing it from R1B single family to ag. Should for any reason the farm not be successful, you cannot revert back to R1B.
Correct.
That is the lowest intensity zoning designation on the zoning map. And once you are ag, because it conforms to the master plan, you will remain ag forever.
Yep, I'm aware. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Bud?
I think the reason there's been so much conversation about commercializing and running a sawmill is because you have told us that you sold 1,000 square feet of lumber. So we want you to make sure you understand that you cannot run a sawmill operation on this property.
And I understand that. And to my previous point, we have a lot of walnuts. We have a lot of maple and cherry trees that have fallen during ice storms and storms during the summer. And I'm a hobbyist of a sawmillist, so I just put them to good use. It's not as if I have plans to go commercial with it at all.
I understand it, but you have to understand you're selling it, and that is not allowed with this kind of zoning.
Understood. Yeah, understood.
What kind of sawmill do you have, by the way?
It's a Wood-Mizer LT40.
Commissioner Atchison.
With what's McKenna consultant has had to say, I'd like to know what was your intent? Like, why did you decide to rezone this property? That's my first question, and then I have a follow-up to asking why you've decided to rezone it. Because, go ahead.
Sure. So the first question, we decided to start the rezoning process just because we're increasingly doing more and more agricultural activities on the property. We plan to start here where there's that clearing there. That's where we're going to put the apple orchard. And in the future, we may open it up to the public to come through and do like a you-pick apple orchard kind of situation. We're also expanding our vegetable garden to be over 1 acre, and it's far too much produce for us to consume. And these are passion projects. These are things that we really, really enjoy doing on the property, and they are of agricultural backgrounds. So as we're moving in that direction, it made sense for us to have our property more accurately reflect the agricultural activities that we are doing on the property.
Okay. So now my follow-up question is, as our consultant from McKenna has stated, is that you cannot go back to residential. And my concern is that the property value. Are you aware of what the property value is as residential versus changing it over to ag? I just want to know if you're aware of what the difference is.
Sure.
Both those values.
I haven't seen a side-by-side comparison, but we don't plan on selling anytime soon, so it's something I haven't really given much thought to.
Okay. I have another question, please. And this I guess is for staff or for the consultant, can you please tell me if at the state of what he's doing right now, what the applicant is doing, does he really need to rezone? Or could he stay doing what he's doing, and then when he decides to expand, maybe come before the planning commission?
I would err on the side of allowing the flexibility to grow into more commercial agricultural production if the intent is to continue producing agricultural goods to the point that you may sell off-site. Rezoning is a good way to plan for that. So if current existing farms have different permissions than something that's trying to start new in the township, because we've relegated commercial agricultural production and commercial farming to this specific zoning district. So anybody who wants to start a new farming operation like this is best suited to do that in the ag district where it's assigned.
And if I may just add, a single-family residential district will not allow you to have 30 chickens.
Okay.
No sawmills. Pardon me, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I do have one other comment. It might just help to highlight one aspect of the conversation Ms. Christian and Commissioner Atchison had. Under ag and estates zoning, you can still have a single-family residential dwelling as a principal use. And in theory, this property could still be split. I don't know, maybe once, maybe twice. It depends on the configuration of the property, but there could be single-family home sites there. And under R1B zoning, splitting to the density that's typical for R1B would be tough there because of the septic issue and the fact that there's no sanitary sewer. So there's other, we can think about this more broadly than just farming in the future as well. But I see this farming being probably a fairly long-term for the site based on what the applicant has presented. I just wanted to clarify that.
Any others from the commissioners? Okay, do we have any comments from the public? Questions, comments? Anyone in the audience care? Do we have anyone on Zoom, Director Power?
There is no one on Zoom.
Seeing none, do we have any movement as far as the commission is concerned concerning the rezoning of this parcel? Commissioner Atchison?
I move to grant a recommendation to the Board of Trustees that we grant Cameron Smith recommendation to rezone property from R1B, single-family residential district, to AG, agriculture and estate. The rezone recommendation is located at 16355 Haggerty Road, described as parcel ID V as in Victor 12583-14299-0001-000 as a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. I also recommend that we notate for the record the facts and the findings recommended in the letter by staff dated June 7th, 2023.
Support.
I have a motion by Commissioner Atchison, support by Commissioner Jar. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Medina Atchison? Yes. Sherry Budd? Brian Cullen?
Yes.
Yes.
Jeff Jar? Yes. Jackson Paul?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We're sending it to the board. And that is a good sawmill, by the way. Yeah, it's mobile. I have one. Okay, item 2 on tonight's agenda. Chris Garner / SB Invest LP Brookwood, final site plan review. A request by Chris Gardner on behalf of owner SB / Invest LP to construct an independent multifamily residential senior housing development with 132 dwelling units with a combined gross floor area of approximately 154,110 square feet, along with a clubhouse and other site improvements. The project is proposed to be titled Brookwood. The project is proposed to be located on the north side of Tyler Road between Morton Taylor and Haggerty Roads on a 44.4 acre site. The site has tax ID number 8304399001500 and is zoned RM Multiple Dwelling Residential District. Can we have the presentation by the township staff, please? Director Power?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Planning Commission is familiar with this case. They held a public hearing for the preliminary site plan review in November of '22, and then action was taken on the preliminary site plan and the special land use approval for the project in December. And the Board of Trustees then approved the special land use in January of this year. And so now the project has been going through engineering review and final site plan review by our consultants and staff for the past several months. So that is the purpose of tonight's discussion and potential action, is to consider approval of the final site plan. I have a couple of comments that I'll handle on the back side of this to respond to some of the items the Board of Trustees mentioned at their approvals of a couple of engineering items. And otherwise, in the meantime, I'll defer to our planning consultant, Vidya Krishnan, to go over her findings, and then our township engineer.
Director Power, members of the commission. As was just summarized, the proposal before you tonight is for final site plan approval for Brookwood, which is a senior housing development on a 44.23 acre site. It will have 132 independent living units in groupings of 2, 4, and 6 units, and also a clubhouse facility. The applicant received preliminary approval from the Planning Commission on December 14th, and that was subject to a series of conditions. So for final site plan approval, we basically review compliance to the conditions of preliminary site plan approval. I'll summarize those in brief. The first condition was notation of a detailed phasing timeline and clarification regarding self-sufficiency of each phase. Now, originally when the applicant had submitted the plan, they had mentioned that they're going to develop it in 4 phases. But when they appeared before you in December, they clarified that the intention is to build it in 3 phases, and a detailed schedule for the public and the infrastructure improvements that are going to be built on the site was also included. Based on that, each individual phase will stand alone and will be self-sufficient. So should for any reason a future phase not materialize, the dwellings that have been constructed will still continue to function perfectly as a self-sufficient development. And the plan notes that the roads and infrastructure will be built at one time, and the project will have a total construction timeline of 18 months, with 8 to 12 units being built per month to be leased as they come online. And given the provision of the roads and other infrastructure being built first, we believe this condition has been met. The second condition was Planning Commission approval of additional parking provided to satisfy visitor parking needs. Now, on paper, when the applicant did their parking calculations, they noted that they have 114 extra parking spaces. It's technically not 114 because they counted the spaces that were also within the garages and in the driveways. So the total number of actual extra spaces that are being constructed are 20, which are spread out throughout the development, so visitors can park and walk. The Planning Commission had recommended that a couple of additional handicap accessible spaces be included among those 20-odd spaces so that any visitors do have ability to move in a wheelchair. So that has been done on the revised plan. The third condition was addition of a deciduous or evergreen tree along Tyler Road in order to meet ordinance requirements, which has been done. The fourth condition was township engineer and Wayne County approvals. I think that was the biggest reason for the applicant taking 6 months to come back before you. They have consistently been working with Wayne County to try and resolve grading issues and stormwater detention issues on the site. At the time this review letter was done, there was a letter from Wayne County still mentioning some unresolved issues, but noting that these are issues that can be worked on. I believe additional documentation from Wayne County was turned in sometime this morning. I have not had a chance to review them, so I will defer to the township's engineer and Director Power to clarify at what stage it is. However, I do not believe the engineering issues that remain to be addressed will have any bearing on final site plan approval. Those conditions will have to be met before they start construction, so it's not a reason to not proceed with final site plan approval. Board of Trustees special land use approval, it was granted by the board on January 17th of 2023. There was a requirement that a dumpster enclosure be added for the clubhouse. At the time the project came before you, there was no dumpster enclosure, and the Planning Commission decided that for a clubhouse that is servicing all of these units, you do need an enclosure. So the revised plan does note an little tiny access drive that comes off the main access drive where the dumpster will be located so trash trucks can navigate in and out of the space. Typical enclosure details have been noted, and they will be block with face brick to match the clubhouse building and will have steel reinforced wooden gates. And finally, there was some discussion about the maneuverability between the units when you have garages facing each other, courtyard type of entries. So the applicant has provided, Director Power has pulled it up over there, has shown the turn diagram. The applicant has shown an F-150 pickup truck actually trying to make the move in and out of the driveway. As is typical in this, they will have to reverse back onto the driveway. The garages are not big enough to accommodate a pickup truck. So anyone in this development who actually has a pickup truck, which is one of the longer vehicles, will be parking in the driveway. However, the garage is more than sufficient to accommodate any of the regular passenger vehicles or sedans. At this time, all of the conditions of preliminary approval have been addressed, with the exception of engineering approval, which the township engineer will address. So it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant final site plan approval for Brookwood Senior Housing Development to be located on Tyler Road, subject to full engineering approval from Wayne County and the township engineer. And this recommendation is made with the understanding that should for any reason, at the time they're getting final engineering approval from Wayne County, any aspect of the site layout change significantly, as is the units moving around or the access drives or any of the improvements moving around, the applicant will have to come back before you for amended approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And Fishbeck, please.
Thank you. At the request of Van Buren Township, Fishbeck has reviewed the engineering plan submitted to the township and distributed for engineering review on June 6, 2023 for the Brookwood multifamily residential facility located on Tyler Road in Van Buren Township, Michigan. The accompanying engineering review letter is an update to the previous engineering plan reviews number 1 and number 2, and the corresponding letters dated March 30th, 2023 and May 9th, 2023. As stated before, this project entails construction of 132 housing units constructed in 2, 4, and 6 dwellings and a clubhouse. HMA paved roadways with concrete curb and gutter, concrete driveways and sidewalks, a full stormwater management system, including an enclosed underground storm system and 5 detention ponds, a new public water main system, including 11 hydrants and service lines to each housing unit, PVC sanitary sewer system with service connections to the proposed buildings, and a pump station outlet structure, and other various landscaping and site plan improvements. In general, the applicant is responsible for meeting all requirements listed in the Township Engineering Standards Manual and showing all the required information on the plans. The applicant should also verify proposed signage locations. A couple of sign locations appear to be placed within some driveways. Detectable warning surfaces should be provided at all crosswalks at intersections with stop signs. There should also be detectable warning plates for the sidewalk crossing at the right-of-way at Tyler Road. Water main service. The township's GIS records in the applicant's plan indicate there's an existing 12-inch asbestos cement water main running east-west along the north side of Tyler Road. Existing information indicates 1 hydrant and 1 gate valve and well along the 12-inch. There's 1 hydrant and 1 gate valve and well along the 12-inch water main. There are also two 42-inch GLWA AC pipe water mains running east-west along Tyler Road. The applicant's plan indicates a new 8-inch ductile iron water main system tying into the existing 12-inch water main in two locations on the north side of Tyler Road. A new gate valve and well will be installed on the existing township 12-inch water main between the two proposed 8-inch taps. The new water main system continues north through the development and terminates at a hydrant at the very north end of the site. The new system includes 11 new hydrants and 1-inch domestic service lines at each housing unit. The plan should indicate the finished grade of all fire hydrants, valve, well rims, and all other water structures. Profile views are currently not indicating finished grade for hydrants. Fire hydrants are also not labeled on sheet C 5.14 and on C 5.15. All hydrants shall be labeled on the water main sheets. Per discussions between the applicant and the township, a water main extension to the east property line was added between units 30 and 31. The original intent of the township engineer's request was to place the water main extension just north of Basin 5, between Basin 5 and the wetlands. Also, per township standards, the applicant must add a gate valve and well at the termination of the water main stub at the property line. And it should also have a profile for the design, and an easement is required. We're currently working through this with the applicant. We requested this during one of the last engineering reviews, so that is still being coordinated between the township and the applicant. The applicant should verify the need for a tapping sleeve. Currently, all the labels, the water main T labels on the plans call out a 12 by 8-inch tapping sleeve. Lastly, for water main, per Chapter 3, Part 4, Section D of the Township Engineering Standards Manual, water services shall not be installed under driveways or other obstacles. Currently, the water shutoff for Unit 119 is under the driveway. Sanitary sewer, the township's GIS records indicate a 15-inch public reinforced concrete pipe sanitary sewer main running east-west along the south side of Tyler Road with two sanitary manholes. One manhole at the east property line and one at the west property line. The sanitary main flows west towards Morton Taylor Road. Township GIS records also indicate a 10-inch sanitary stub at the very northeast corner of the site. However, the proposed plans do not show the northernmost portion of the property being developed, as it's all state-regulated wetlands. The applicant's plan indicates a proposed 10-inch PVC pipe sanitary sewer main to be constructed throughout the development, with 6-inch PVC leads and cleanouts at each housing unit. The sanitary system is proposed to outlet via a pump station located at the south side of the site. On the west side of the entrance drive, a 4-inch sanitary force main is proposed to be installed under Tyler Road and connect the pump station to a new manhole constructed over the existing township sanitary main. The proposed sanitary sewer will be crossing under Tyler Road and underneath the two existing 42-inch GLWA water mains. A final engineering review of the pump station was completed by the township engineer, and comments were provided as part of a separate letter. This letter was for the Board of Trustees meeting where they approved the use of the pump station. There were comments in this letter, and we asked the applicant review this letter and provide responses accordingly. Currently, as stated in that separate pump station letter, we do still have some concerns with the constructability and installation of the force main underneath Tyler Road due to the utilities there and the depth of the excavation being proposed. The applicant should verify all all the information for the sanitary sewer system is labeled correctly and shown on the plan and profiles. Some profiles were missing storm sewer crossings, elevations weren't quite matching up, so just verify all of that information. Lastly, for sanitary, also show the sanitary sewer easement should be shown on all the plans. Storm sewer, the applicant's plan show an existing 10-inch RCP storm sewer with two catch basins running east-west along the north side of Tyler Road. There are no other storm sewers located on the site. The applicant's plan proposes a full stormwater management system with several catch basins and underground sewers that outlet to 5 detention ponds with sediment forebays that are all interconnected and acting as one basin. The detention ponds outlet to a storm main that conveys metered flow north through the site and ultimately outlet to the wetlands in the northwest corner of the site. For our storm sewer comments, all the storm sewer sizes should be indicated on the plans. And again, the applicant should verify all rims, pipe lengths, elevations, all match, and everything is labeled and shown correctly on the profiles. Per Chapter 5, Part B of the Van Buren Township Standards Manual, plastic pipe is not allowed under the influence of the road. The section of pipe from manhole 401 to CB 401 must be RCP. Detention pond details should show the permanent pools of water and corresponding elevations. Select overflow routes are shown on sheets C 6.2 through C 6.5. All overflow routes should be indicated and shown. The applicant shall have emergency overflow for all proposed ponds. Currently, there are only details for ponds 1, 4, and 5. OHM review comments dated 6/20 were submitted to the township on 6/21 by the applicant. The applicant must update their plans per OHM review letter and receive county approval prior to the applicant moving forward to the pre-construction phase of this process. As was indicated before, we need to see approval from the county, OHM and the county, and if there are any significant changes, we will ask to do another engineering review and come back to the planning commission meeting, or planning commission. For paving and grading, several crosswalks do not appear to include curb drops and ramps. Sidewalk ramps and curb drops should be provided at all crosswalks. Per Chapter 7, Section A, Part 9, under street design criteria of the Township Manual, 6-inch edge drain is required along all roadways. Lastly, recommendation, Fitchbeck recommends the Planning Commission grant final site plan approval based on the engineering review of the Brookwood multifamily residential plans dated June 6, 2023, contingent to the applicant addressing all the comments in the above letter and receiving county approval for stormwater management. If the applicant does not receive county approval and must make significant changes, the township may request the applicant resubmit plans for final engineering review. The applicant must update the drawings per the above comments prior to moving to the pre-construction phase of the township site plan process. And issued for construction set with all updates included must be submitted for review by the township engineer. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. And we have a letter from the fire marshal, the fire department, Director Power.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The fire marshal provided a letter dated June 13th that indicated that some of the previous preliminary site plan review comments had been addressed. He noted that the hydrant has been added in front of units 20 to 21, that an 18-inch mountable curb has been shown on sheet C3.8, that the fire lane signs are noted in the site plan set, and posted signage showing no parking on either side of the street have been added. There's a comment that the face of the curb radii has been changed from 25 feet to 30 feet. In addition, sheets C 9.0 through 9.4 show adequate fire truck turning movement through the development. So in summary, his previous concerns have been addressed. And of course, the fire department would be part of any individual plan reviews for the site as well at that point in the process. And Mr. Chair, if...
Some additional comments to add to it?
Yes, thank you. So I did want to bring up some of the additional comments, and let me just get to that point in my report. I wanted to remind the Planning Commission that there were a couple of items that we knew one of them was going to come to the forefront over the course of engineering, and then another one developed during engineering review. If you recall, one of the keystone aspects of this project is that it is designed in a manner that preserves a lot of wetland. It's not going to disturb the wetland areas. This graphic here is a kind of crude attempt to show that they're kind of grading the site up and leaving those wet areas around the perimeter of the site low and not disturbing those areas. That's a long way of saying that the utility design had to be designed such that they weren't going to cut across the wetlands on the north end of the site, which on this image is on the left side, in part because there was even a conservation easement that they got from the state of Michigan to preserve those wetlands. So the one natural point to connect sanitary discharge to in terms of gravity connectivity would have been the northeast corner of the site, or in this image, the top left. And that was not feasible because of what that would have meant in terms of disturbing woodlands and wetlands. So the alternate routing for the sanitary discharge was had to go to the south instead, and in doing so, as the township engineer mentioned, it had to go across Tyler Road. So I just wanted to reiterate that there was a pump station approval that was done by the Board of Trustees to accommodate that direction of sanitary discharge across Tyler Road to the south. The other thing that came up in the engineering review was the stormwater ponds. There are 5 stormwater detention basins. 2 of them were designed at a shallower permanent pool depth than the 4 feet that's in our engineering standards. Deviations from those standards have to go to the Board of Trustees for review. And so the Board of Trustees on June 20th reviewed and approved the shallower pool depth for 2 of the 5 ponds, and those are the ones up on the up on the north edge of the site. Those are the ones that are kind of that greener, the more green color that kind of blend in with the wetland areas. Ponds 2, 3, and 4 on the south portion of the site are remaining at the standard depth. But I say all that as context for the fact that there were a couple of conditions that came out of the board's review from that request for the shallower pond depth. One was that the applicant provide any detail that they're able to provide regarding aeration or mosquito control, and that can be aerating ponds, or it can be specific plantings that help to manage mosquitoes. There can also be other methods that, in terms of ongoing maintenance, that the owner can speak to if they have any comments regarding that. But the Board of Trustees did direct staff and the Planning Commission to take a look at aeration or mosquito control as part of the final site plan review. And so I'd encourage the Planning Commission to consider what the applicant has to say about that and provide either aeration or some other method of mosquito control, especially on ponds 2, 3, and 4 that are out closer to the open portion of the site away from the wetlands. The other condition that I would recommend the Planning Commission consider also came out of that discussion with the Board of Trustees, and that would be that adjacent to any open detention basin, per section 8107D1 of the Township Zoning Ordinance, unless there's a pond that's really not accessible to the public or is designed to be shallower, shallower depth, like with a shelf along the edges, fencing is to be required. My recommendation to the Planning Commission is that specific to ponds, pond 4, which is out near the front of the site, which will have a 4 plus or minus foot permanent pool depth, that pond should have decorative 4-foot fencing around it. And I would encourage the Planning Commission to require that for that pond. There may be some discussion that can be had about the ponds further north into the site, as they are more internal to the site configuration, and particularly the 2 on the north end that are going to be blending more into the wetland areas. Those are going to be shallow basins that really don't have the same safety concerns. But I would recommend the consideration of fencing around pond 4 on the south end. Otherwise, I would just add to the comments from our reviewing consultants. There are a number of engineering items. They are being addressed on an ongoing basis by the applicant, and there's a lot of detail that has to come out in any given pre-construction plan set, and I think our township engineer was confident they could achieve those corrections in time for the pre-construction step. There's just a lot of detail that goes into that. So staff broadly has written recommendations for supporting conditional final site plan approval, and I will defer you to invite the applicant up to speak to their project. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you. And now for the applicant. Your opportunity, sir. What have you got for us? Introduce yourself as well, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission and Mr. Power. My name is Luke Bonner, Bonner Advisory Group, 1054 South Main, Ann Arbor, Michigan. We're consultants to the project. I do want to introduce the team. The entire team is here this evening. Starting with Golan Sapir, who is here from Israel, the primary owner investor in the project. We have Melody Stevens is here. Ido Furman, who did a nine-hour drive from New York to be here this evening. So we have Chris Garner, owner. We have our consulting engineers from Wade Trim, Eric Smith and Veronica Clark, and our other real estate consultant, Tom Gritter from Gritter Real Estate Services, and Gordon Dion, who enter stage left. We do appreciate all of the support for this project going through the process over the last 24 months. The staff has been excellent to work with and very consultative and very, very helpful. The point that we're at this evening is a request for final site plan approval contingent upon the engineering conditions being met. We do feel in the course of the last several months, the engagement with Wayne County, OHM as their engineering consultant, and the township's engineering consultant has been pretty regular and continuous. We do feel like the engineering items that are outstanding are more detailed and administrative type items. So I think we all collectively felt comfortable that there weren't any engineering issues that were going to massively change the site plan or alter the site plan at all. Hence the reason for us being here this evening. And in all of those issues have been addressed in a response letter from Wade Trim to the county and to Fishbeck. So we feel, very comfortable of managing those final details on the engineering drawings and get those submitted for final site plan approval. As it pertains to mosquito management that was brought up, we do believe that's in general an overall property management issue that we plan to take on. Because if you walk the site on the north end where the conservation easement is, it's pretty heavy mosquito territory up there. So there's definitely going to be a plan for residents in general to manage that. When it comes to the ponds, we certainly plan to manage it more from sort of an infestation related item versus potentially aeration, only because the ponds are shallow and they'll dry out really quickly. So I'm not sure if aeration is the best method versus consistently spraying. But we certainly will discuss that with the township as well. And related to fencing, we do agree, if there's a safety issue on the fence on the pond along Tyler Road, we certainly can meet that with a decorative 4-foot-high aluminum fence that has the wrought iron look to it. Again, we're appreciative to be here this evening. We appreciate all the support. We have other members of our team here that could answer questions if you have them. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jarrett.
question for Fishbeck Engineering. What kind of standards are there around mosquito abatement in a drainage pond like these, in these sort of ponds?
I'm not, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Engineering standards don't typically deal with mosquito repellent. For my, coming from the Township Engineering Standard Manual, the stormwater detention pond section just states 4-foot permanent pool water, 1 on 6 side slopes, no aeration or anything like that is mentioned in the engineering manual. So at this moment, that's as far as I probably can answer that question. I certainly can follow up on that and see if I can find anything else.
Director Power, the mosquito aeration that you suggested, did you have any standards for what should be done?
The zoning ordinance is pretty broad, and that's my understanding as well. There's nothing that I've seen in our engineering standards that speak to the aeration. It's just a comment in our stormwater pond section of our zoning ordinance that asks for consideration of aerating, the mechanical aeration, or selective plantings. And those, I'm not entirely sure what that planting mix would be, but generally the more you're maintaining and keeping more of kind of a wetland aesthetic and holding a permanent bottom of water in a shallow depth, you're gonna have those mosquito concerns as opposed to moving water. So the planting selection may just be more of a uniform planting than a mix of wetland species, but I'm not sure, Ms. Krishnan, do you have some ideas?
Just an insight. At least in history, we used to require aerators in ponds till Wayne County said no. If I'm not mistaken, there were a few years ago when Wayne County decided they did not want to see aerators in their pond. That is why we do planning for a lot of Wayne County municipalities, and we have seen across the board that aerators are no longer permitted in the ponds. There might be something in Wayne County. It's still there in our zoning ordinance, but the county may not allow it. So I think the best way to manage it is through selecting what kind of plants go in around the basin so that they don't harbor mosquito breeding grounds, and also spraying them as part of the regular thing. Aerators, if at all the Planning Commission should choose to consider it as an option, definitely add it if the county permits it, because ultimately the pond is under Wayne County's approval, and to my knowledge, they don't allow aerators anymore.
Is there a reason, general question, is there a reason to assume that these drainage ponds would have more mosquitoes than the wetland it's being converted from?
No.
Sorry, it just felt like I had to ask that. And these, to be clear, these are permanent, these are retention ponds, like detention ponds or retention ponds?
Detention ponds, 3 of them will have the township standard 4-foot pool water, and the 2 northernmost ponds will have the shallower. Technically, it's called, per the county standards, it's called a constructed wetland. It'll have about a foot of permanent pool of water, and then 50% of that pond area will include wetland plantings per county standards.
And there was, I'll make as a comment, I counted at least 33 punch items on the engineering report, and I see that there's a wade trim response. Have you had a chance to skim over the wade trim response to your punch items?
I don't believe I've seen the wade trim response to the latest letter.
Okay.
Yeah, several minor detail comments on the engineering letter. Yeah.
Okay, and it did sound like the applicant is aware of all of the items on the engineering list and is not contesting any of them at this time. I suppose, Mr. Chairman, that's a question for the applicant to answer,
Yes.
if I could.
Yes, please, ask the applicant.
Good evening, I'm Eric Smith with Wade Trim. On a couple of the comments, I wanted to go back to the comment about the plantings or aeration in the ponds. Yeah, our experience has been that, yeah, aeration is something we haven't done in a while, and we have landscape architects on site, on staff, and I asked them about what type of plantings there could be, and there really isn't anything. The best way to handle mosquito control is to have a spraying plan, and that's the plan that the applicant's going to do. In terms of the response letters, yes, I agree. A lot of those are detailed final construction document type comments that I agree we can pick up, and it doesn't change the design intent that you see here for final site plan approval.
You don't have any argumentative position against what our
Correct.
engineers are proposing, is that?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, just correction, the last round of comments we received from you, we haven't responded back to those yet.
Sure.
We just responded to the county ones here in the last couple days,
Correct.
so, yep.
Our letter was sent out last Wednesday.
Yep.
So I'm not, yeah.
Yep, it's in process.
I have a question. You mentioned to control the mosquitoes, you have a spraying plan. how might that spraying plan potentially affect the wetlands and the wildlife in the area?
Well, we would stay in the developed area, and
Material, would you plan on using, is it toxic in any way?
no, there's something my landscape architect recommended that would be good, natural, but I don't have the specifics.
So you'll just make it clear that you can't use anything that would be detrimental to the wetlands and local wildlife?
Correct. Yeah, we can put that in the maintenance plan.
Okay. I have another question. I think this may be a Fishbeck question, though. You mentioned in your write-up that there are still concerns with the constructability installation of the forest main relative to the existing utilities in Tyler Road. And assuming that's related to the pump, right? Get underneath the road. When you say that, are you saying that during construction it may be difficult and there may be problems? Or are you saying at this point in time they haven't totally, engineered that system to get over there and make it work?
A little of both. So constructability-wise, it appears to be very difficult. The GLWA 42-inch water mains there are, I believe, 13 or 14 feet deep. So when you open cut, you start excavating Tyler Road to place a force main that has to be 1.5 feet lower than the 42-inch water mains, you're getting to depths of 17, 18 feet. And right now, and I'm not necessarily can't be done, but the plans had a detail for the open cut that just showed as a kind of a typical trench detail, one-on-one slopes going up, and I think OHM, the county had a comment recently about they noted that it would probably be difficult to maintain one lane of traffic and do that. They need to provide, they don't have a detour plan yet. So there are several details that I believe they need to work through still. That's a very deep excavation and very sensitive water main, transmission mains. And I think the report said they were AC pipe, but I believe we just recently found out they're pre-stressed concrete pipe. So they're large concrete with reinforcing steel that's been pre-tight stressed. And those are fairly delicate, I'm been hearing, and we just want to make sure that it's very detailed on how this gets constructed. We also had a comment in there about to go over those 42-inch water mains. There's just a 10-inch. I shouldn't say just a. There's a county drain there that it appears to travel under the entrance drive there in a 10-inch culvert. We just want to make sure the applicant looks at, could that 10-inch culvert be raised? Could the water main be lowered, et cetera? We want to make sure all those details are very clearly designed on the plans. MOT, detour plan, area construction, influence area, all of those items should be detailed out. Just because if you excavate a trench like that, you're gonna get 18 feet deep. That needs to be so wide, you're getting the 18, 20 feet wide hole. And you need to support 3.5 foot large water mains while you're doing all that work. That's the concern. We want to make sure GLWA is aware of what you guys are, and I believe that we've had that comment before too.
Okay, so you're confident they can achieve it, they just have to work through the details, is what it sounds like?
Yeah, it should be addressed and acknowledged on the plans, whether, I believe OHM has commented on, they initially approved the open cut, but they recently asked for MOT as well. So as long as the construction details on the plans are a little more shown clearly.
Through the chair. Okay, I'll make a couple of comments. There's a design of the actual pump station apparatus that, to my understanding, it's unlikely to change. The method of having to divert the wastewater that way is probably the only feasible route from what we've reviewed. So a lot of the construction issues that are coming at this point are relative to how the pipes cross Tyler Road, to my understanding, and that's the detail that has to come forward. But to my understanding, that's not likely to change the location or the overall method of having to use a pump station at that site. Is that fair?
I forgot, you had mentioned so the pump station system itself, we recommended approval of it. The pumps, so our concern mainly is on the 4-inch outlet that will cross Tyler. So even if that changes or it doesn't change, the pump system itself that the Board of Trustees, or we recommended the board approve, that would not change.
Commissioner Jarr.
There was a question about pond fencing and decorative fencing on the different ponds. I was wondering if any of the other commissioners had an opinion about requiring fencing around the ponds.
That was one of my concerns, is it possible that those homes could have young children at them at some point in time, correct? Yeah. I mean, this is senior housing, so therefore I'm looking that there could be grandparents there, and I know what my mom and dad were like when my sister and brother had children. They just loved their grandkids and loved having them around. But I also know that they're very adventurous and take off, and I become concerned when we deal with ponds around residences. So is there some
And for the record, Dan's kids probably aren't going to be playing around these ponds. So we're happy to do with whatever has been consistent practice of the township before related to these ponds. Fencing the ponds is not an issue. There are some ponds that are a little more flat and may not necessarily need it. But if there is a pond that appears to be maybe potentially more attractive to visitors, especially grandkids, then we certainly can take care of that.
Mr. Chair, my opinion on it was that I think Pond 4 is the one on the south near Tyler Road and the sidewalk. And that pond, it may be appropriate to put fencing around that since it is next to a public sidewalk. The pond's interior to the development, however, it's a pretty small development, it's pretty tight. There's not a lot of space between the houses and the ponds, and I was thinking that maybe the fencing is not required on the interior ponds, or at least maybe I didn't have a very strong opinion about fencing on the interior ponds, but I really felt that the Pond 4 near the public sidewalk, for consistency with other drainage ponds near sidewalks and streets in our community, probably does require the decorative fencing. That's why I was asking what your opinions were.
Actually, I would agree with that comment, but I do have a question. Could you basically describe maybe, is there a difference between the two internal ponds as far as how they're designed with regard to where the water line starts?
The ponds are generally designed the same in terms of how they're holding water, which is ordinance by the township.
What about within the, say, first 5 feet of the water edge?
So in terms of the slope, so the slopes are all designed to be the same slope. No.
Get to.
Correct.
Okay.
And the site's generally flat to begin with. The
Right.
ponds then end up being a little bit flatter. The ordinance of the township has a little bit of a flatter slope. With a 4-foot standing water requirement, we had the variance approval last week for 2 of the ponds, which are much flatter with only 1 foot of water being held in those ponds.
I can't read the grade lines, but roughly what's the drop between the grade lines? Probably seen there.
I think they're 1 foot contours.
They're 1 foot. I don't know. What's the deepest point in the pond?
It's 8 feet.
Okay.
4 feet for the permanent water.
Yeah, they are 1 foot then, yeah.
Goes up so that it can hold stormwater.
Okay.
Historically, the Planning Commission has not required fencing around detention ponds unless the pond is located in an area where it can be an attractive nuisance, such as pond number 4 that's right next to Tyler Road.
That's what I'm thinking.
It's attractive to kids who are just passing by, not necessarily those that are visiting their grandparents. So I think having a fence around pond 4 with Tyler Road frontage makes a lot of sense, so that just kids who are passing by Tyler Road don't just decide to go in there and do something. So, but interior ponds, we have typically not required it because that has been consistent, our standards. And as Mike was mentioning, pond number 3, correct me if I'm using the term wrong, he said it's designed with gabion baskets?
Yeah, pond number 3 has gabion baskets, correct?
I'll defer to our landscape.
Those are not sloped lawn area, correct? So that, would you mind describing those real quick? I'm not sure if I'm gonna correctly.
It's more of a tiered design, right?
Yeah.
If it's a gabion basket kind of design.
Southernmost interior one.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's the one all the way to the right in the picture.
The colored graphic, yes, the colored one, yes, that helps.
That right one, yes, the smaller one.
That's 3.
Understood, thank you.
This is 4, that would be 2.
And 3 is gabion basketed because it's a smaller pond in a smaller area and therefore needs
Yeah.
a deeper slope, right? Yeah, okay.
Exactly why I got it. It acts like a terrace.
It acts like a terrace.
Mhm.
I got it.
Do they both have the same volume?
Yes.
That's why.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, through the chair. When we
Commissioner Bud.
first looked at it, we saw that the F-150 fit in the garage, and that's the dimensions that was there. Now they're saying an F-150 or a larger SUV will not fit in the garage. How small are these garages?
I don't think they changed the size of the garage. Initially, when they showed the figures, it was a regular vehicle. The garages, I believe, are still 20 by, could you, Dan, do you have the site plan sheet? What's the size of the garages?
But you're still saying that a truck,
Floor plan layout on that.
My garage didn't allow for my F-150 to go into it. And I don't know if anybody else does, so, I mean, no, they've never changed. They never allowed it for an F-150 to be parked in it, just because of the height.
bigger SUV.
Most garages,
In order for any of a larger SUV to be parked, at least based on the standard dimensions, you have to have a garage that is minimum 22 by 22. Most homes have a standard garage size of 20 by 20, which would not fit a larger pickup truck. Unfortunately, the trucks are getting bigger. The garages mostly remain the same unless they are the larger lot homes which have 3-car garages. But yes, the applicant has not changed the dimensions of the garage. It's just that when they
Turning ratio, okay.
they were showing the turning radius, it appeared in the initial diagram as though the vehicle they showed was also going into the garage. I think they clarified this time that the vehicle they are showing is an F-150, but the garage will accommodate an Escape or an Edge or an SUV of that dimension. I'm not sure exactly what the size of the garage is, but if Director Dan could see, I don't know if the drawing shows it. I'm guessing it's somewhere around.
Yes, I apologize. Sometimes technology does not keep up with the conversation, so bear with me. I'm going to try to find the exact floor plan for that. Here we go.
Don't remember seeing it, it's all site plans.
The printed set is 149 sheets, so I made sure to, I consolidated the set for tonight's viewing. So I do have the floor plan up now. I'll show this, and just bear with me while I get it centered.
He gave us elevations, but he didn't give us the floor plan.
Just a moment. That's a very abridged set. The print set is 10% of the, the real set was 149 sheets, so we didn't want to put that all in your packets. But the digital set that was submitted in the link for this meeting tonight is, apologize for the candid view there, but I'm sorry, let me try to get this projected. The digital set that was sent with the email to planning commissioners last week and what's up on the website has all sheets on it. But I'm looking at the plan right now. It's 22 at its shallowest, lengthwise by 20'8". So that's the approximate dimensions. I don't know why that's not showing right now. So there you go, 22 by 20'8". And if I get a better image, I'll be sure to put it on the screen.
That would be tight for a truck unless you're a really good parking, otherwise you'll be inside your house. 1 foot mistake, so. Because most of the older homes, I live in one, the garage is 20 by 20, and my truck is always parked outside because I tried pulling it in once and I'm literally, the door will come down on my tailgate. So, yeah, this probably, if you have an F-150 and you live here, you're going to park it in your driveway.
It might be worth also just calling out the standard parking space width for an off-street parking space is 10 by 20, just as a point of reference.
Just a comment, I guess, on how they're going to get across Tyler Road. I mean, I think we all realize that is the main road that people from Romulus are getting into Myers, as well as all of those housing projects right there along the line. So I think we need to be very careful that it's done the way it needs to be, and then when it's reconstructed, that we don't end up with a sinkhole out there that people have to contend with because it's right by the intersection.
Absolutely.
Through the chair,
Commissioner Atchison.
I just have a question in regards to these units are going to be leased out. Okay? Through the applicant, please.
Chris Garner. Yeah, I think we believe we addressed this on a previous meeting in regards to the business model. With senior independent living, that typically a business model is for a long-term lease.
Right.
And that is a standard practice in this area. So that is the current business model.
So with that being said, you will allow for F-150s to be parked in the driveway? Okay. Just wondering what the rules and regulations are going to be.
Don't think they would have a right to restrict what people drive.
Well, some HOAs or residents don't allow for parking overnight in the driveway.
No, I don't think that would be feasible in this situation.
Through the chair, do you have another business model like this of a residence that you've built nearby that I could go visit?
Taylor Brookwood is currently under construction.
Brookwood.
And that's located?
On Goddard Road, right just west of of Telegraph, between, right next to the post office. And Taylor and Brookwood Fenton is currently under we're doing grading and land clearing right now.
Through the chair, very belatedly, there's a display of the typical garage on the screen. So you can see the 16-foot clear area of the overhead doors and the 22-foot 2 depth, just for a point of reference.
Depends on how big your cab in the back is.
Wouldn't be able to walk around it very easily.
Talking about ceilings.
Okay, do we have any other comments from the commissioners?
Yes, I tried.
Seeing none, do we have any comments from the public? Anyone on Zoom, Director Power?
See nobody on Zoom.
In that case, do we have any motions from the commission?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Jar.
I move to grant the applicant, Chris Garner, on behalf of owner SB Invest LP, the final site plan approval to construct, what are we constructing? An independent multifamily residential senior housing development with 132 dwelling units, along with a clubhouse and other site improvements at the site located on the north side of Tyler Road between Morton Taylor and Haggerty Roads with tax parcel ID 8304399001500, based on the analysis and subject to the conditions detailed in the letter from staff dated 21 June 2023, McKenna letter dated 21 June, Fishback letter dated 21 June, the VBT fire report dated 13 June, all of 2023, with the additional condition that a wetland-compatible mosquito abatement plan be included in the plans, and that fencing, decorative fencing for pond number 4 is required per the staff recommendation humbly submitted for your support.
Support.
And we have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Grant. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Medina Atchison. Yes. Sherry Budd.
Yes.
Brian Cullen.
Yes.
Bernard Grant. Yes. Jeff Shore.
Yes.
Jackson Paul.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving ahead, item number 3.
He drove 9 hours and
Chair, if you would mind, if I can ask you to indulge. Golan Sapir from Israel, if he would like to, if we could get a picture of him shaking your hand.
Oh,
We waited 3 years for that, so thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you, guys.
You need to turn around so he can, yeah, there you go.
Dan, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
wait, did ask you.
People in the audience.
Yes.
I'll go, wait a minute.
Rosemary, you're all alone. Okay, item number 3 for tonight, zoning ordinance text amendments, detached single-family residential dwelling height regulations. Proposed amendments that will modify the maximum allowable height for detached single-family dwellings to allow detached single-family dwellings to be 2.5 stories in height or 35 feet in height. The amendments will include updates to sections 3.106, R1A, R2A, R1B, and R1C single-family residential districts, 3.107, RM, multiple dwelling residential district, 3.109, AG, agricultural and estate district, and 4.102, schedule of regulations. We have presentation by the township staff. Director Power.
Mr. Chair, this is one of several times the Planning Commission has seen this, probably the same memo. I don't think much has changed since Ms. Krishnan first wrote it. But this image on the screen really encapsulates what the extent of this proposed ordinance change would involve. Our zoning ordinance is inconsistent with some of these area comparison communities we found in terms of being more restrictive. It has a 30-foot height limit and 2-story height limit, as compared with a more standard 35-foot / 2.5-story. And this graphic shows you what the effect of that could be at kind of the maximum extent of it. The height is measured from the front average grade elevation to the halfway point between a eave and a peak of a roof on a typical gable roof structure. So this would be an example of a 2.5-story, 35-foot structure. And Ms. Krishnan has a report that she wrote, and basically if the Planning Commission would like to forward the recommendation to adopt this zoning ordinance text amendment set to the board, we'd turn it into an ordinance format and then bring it to the Board of Trustees at an upcoming date. Please feel free.
You might want to mark what grade is. doesn't show what, it should denote grade, where it begins, even though it's clear to us.
Sounds good. This is an amendment that the Planning Commission has been discussing for many months now. You even had a public hearing last time, but because the agenda was so heavy, action on this was deferred. You have two memos in your packet. They're essentially the same thing, except the one we did in May showed the changes in isolation, and the Planning Commission wanted to see where exactly does it fit in the zoning ordinance. So that is why this one is slightly more lengthier. It's the exact same text, and the recommendation to change it from 30 feet and 2 stories to 35 feet and 2.5 stories come from a research of all our neighboring municipalities, seeing how other communities handle and what impact this has on the residential stock in our township. So essentially, by making this change, we are not really creating more building mass or building height. We are just allowing for existing space to be utilized to create that half story, which right now, even if your building is that height, you can't. So this allows for existing single-family residential footprints, even if they are smaller, to maximize the living space within themselves and is consistent with what almost every other municipality has on their zoning ordinance. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And I will make a correction to this drawing to write where exactly the grade is before it goes to the Board of Trustees, and I'll also put it in a format of a typical, with a severance clause and all that. It will be in the correct format.
Okay, do we have any discussion? I have a question. This is just for the homes, right?
Yes.
Because if somebody wanted to build a traditional barn on an ag piece of land, this doesn't have any
No.
bearing on that whatsoever.
No, this is strictly for dwellings,
Okay,
homes only.
that's what I thought, but I wanted to clarify before it went further. Because we just had an ag man in
Yes.
there. He wants to build a full hay barn. Those things get pretty tall.
Yeah.
Do we have any other comments besides mine?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Commissioner Grant, as an architect, you think it's okay?
I think it's fine.
Thank you, sir.
I would ask for public comment, but we don't have anybody out here. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we have action by the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jar.
I move to recommend to the Township Board that they adopt the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance text in sections 3.106, R1A, R2A, R1B, and R1C single-family residential districts, section 5.107, RM multiple dwelling residential district, section 3.109, AG agricultural and estate district, and section 4.102, schedule of regulations, to modify the maximum allowable height for detached single-family dwellings to be the lesser of 2.5 stories in height or 35 feet in height, as described in the McKenna letters dated May 1st, 2023, and June 7th, 2023.
Do we have a support? Support by Commissioner Grant. Do we have a discussion on the motion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Medina Atchison? Yes. Sherry Budd? Yes. Brian Cullen? Yes. Bernard Grant?
Yes.
Jeff Jar? Yes. Jackson Paul?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Moving on.
Mr. Chair, we could have done that one in the last meeting.
Right.
That was rather quick. Moving ahead, do we have any updates? General discussion and updates. Director Powers?
Our ordinance subcommittees have been meeting periodically, just to give an update for everybody. Agritourism Ordinance Committee, we did have a date for our next meeting that we've adjusted. There's been some moving parts, so I'll be probably contacting everybody on that committee separately soon after today's meeting to set up the next meeting, which may be at a farm site, to see some real-time practical application of this at the DeBuck site, but to be determined. And then EV Ordinance Committee, we met last on June 6th, and we're processing some feedback from that discussion as we speak. So just an update on those two items. At this time, I'm not sure about the July 12th meeting date, so I'll let everybody know as soon as I know if we're going to have a meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any comments, questions, announcements?
Through the chair, I just have a suggestion. Back in, I think it was 2014, 2015, way before Dan had joined us, the Planning Commission with the City of Belleville and the Planning Commission with Van Buren Township got together, and they shared some best practices and ideas. I've often said that the City of Belleville and Van Buren Township are married. What happens to Van Buren Township affects the City of Belleville and vice versa. They're a married couple that cannot get divorced. And I would like us to somehow put on our things to do list a time where we can invite them either here. We met with them last time at Belleville High School, and I just would like to touch base with them again since then, because we had discussed a lot of things back in, Ron Akers was Dan at the time, and a lot of things that have since happened in the city of Belleville. So I just want to touch base again to make sure that we're still in good relations and we're scratching each other's back. So.
I agree wholeheartedly. Having been at that meeting, that was the first Planning Commission meeting that I sat on, and I was in awe of everyone together sharing ideas, and I thought it was great, and we haven't done it since. I would like very much to do that meeting again. I thought it was good for everybody.
Right, and maybe we can throw in a training session too, so we can.
I love training.
Another check in the box?
Ms. Chair, I'd also add that we had a training session from our consultant, Ms. Krishnan, with regard to missing middle housing. That was very interesting and enlightening, and I wanted to thank our consultant for taking the time to present that to us.
Absolutely, that was.
I learned a lot while I was researching for missing middle too. I realized there weren't any presentations. Missing middle is a term that is often used in planning, but when it came down to it and I started talking to everybody, yeah, there is missing middle. I'm like, so where is it missing? I mean, like, where is it missing from? And what are we missing? How do we make it? They're like, well, it's an idea. So I'm like, what are the next steps? How do you realize the idea? So that's when I started putting together the presentation. And it's really wonderful that the township is actually taking step, not just saying, oh, this is a fancy new concept, but the concept that can be realized to make real difference. So that would be great.
Yes, and it was. And thank you, Director Power.
Doctor?
Yeah, I don't know. I get stuck on that all the time. But Director Power for organizing that and allowing it to be held here in the township.
Team effort, thank you.
Yes. Do we have anything else for the commission? We'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Eating his.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Right. That's why I didn't even offer the discussion. Nope.